where bounties are being offered on the animals. In the short term, the athletes confronting the altered landscape are suffering the consequences of the beaver's extensive work. After crossing the bogs and dams, Helly Hansen-Prunesco is first in to control point 11. One way to ward off the ill effects of damp feet is to, once you've reached high ground, shed that wet footwear and let the sun do its work. A picnic is in order, as the Finnish demonstrate here the benefits of undertaking an expedition if you're well prepared and not in too much of a hurry. While the race leaders circumnavigated the ropes and swam the fast frigid river, other teams, such as the Canadian squad Untamed New England, have skirted the banks with its thick shrubbery to arrive for a wild and frigid ride. The Tyrolean Traverse manages to do the job, but just. Perhaps it's better than total submersion. It certainly looks more fun. The fourth night descends on the race, now completely contained within the Darwin Range, while the second-place team Switzerland finds itself ensconced for the night at control point 11, drying wet clothes and planning for a full night's rest. 16 kilometres away, Helly Hansen-Prunesco receives a warm welcome from the control officer at checkpoint 12. The Brits decide to take advantage of the open terrain at the high elevation and continue to move forward and back into the night. In the early morning of day 5, Team Switzerland navigates the beaver ponds and bogs on their journey southward. They've yet to complete half of the epic trek. Pressure appears in the form of Team Air Europa Bermont. The Spaniards seem motivated to gain ground in the battle for second. Moving confidently and nearing control point 13, first-place team Helly Hansen-Prunesco encounter a dog belonging to one of the checkpoint personnel. A sure sign the team is emerging from the isolated mountains and moving ever nearer to the kayak. The Spanish have soon overtaken the Swiss and moved with purpose through the mountains. Checkpoint 12 offers one of the most scenic vantage points in the Darwin Range. Matching the stature of the surrounding peaks, the view from here is commanding. By the time the second-place team reaches control point 12, they've moved over 2 hours ahead of their closest rival. Motivated by good weather and stunning surroundings, the team continues to move efficiently under the navigational skills of orienteering veteran Ötzi Iglesias. Now above the tree line, Team Switzerland works its way to the next check, isolated between teams and slowly losing ground. Ahead, a stumble in the rocky terrain has cut the knee of Team Air Europa Bermont's Use Freil. Luckily, she's in good hands as our well-prepared teammates dress the wound. There's little chance of rescue up here, and almost 50 kilometres of trekking left to do. Germany's Team Herberts is next to make the control high in the Darwin Range. They're just at 4.5 hours behind the Swiss and are fourth in the race. With Use's knee wrapped, the team plods on in the final throes of the highest portion of the trek. Despite their injured teammate, Team Air Europa Bermont is gaining a small amount of ground on the British ahead, while pushing away from the Swiss and the German teams behind. But there's little chance of catching the leaders. The Helly Hansen-Prunesco squad have made their way to the bay of Yen de Gaia. In spite of grey skies, the team soars along the bay, closing out 114 kilometres of tough trekking. The team has rested little in 2.5 days' effort, making good tactical and navigational choices along the way. With ultimate style, the team double times it into the last trekking control, ending the slog with strength and finesse. Race founder Stepan Pavicic enthusiastically greets the defending champions and current race leaders. With a mandatory rest and a stopping of the race clock until the kayaking can be undertaken in the morning, the Brits finally relax. The nearer the teams get to bay, the wetter it becomes. The runoff from the Darwin floods the delta below and provides ideal circumstances for Patagonia's notorious tairball or bog. Emerging from the tairball is small respite. Another river blocks passage. That means swimming. Then the trek is resumed for the remainder of the long daylight hours here in the far southern hemisphere. While the rest of the race plays catch-up in the bogs and streams of final trekking sections, Team Helly Hansen dons their paddling attire and gears up for the race's only kayak section, just short of 50 kilometres. The paddle will take them across and down the Beagle Channel and into the Bay of Uaya. In trying and possibly dangerous conditions, the lead team launches on their water journey, leaving the island of Tierra del Fuego for the first time since the race began. Once the Bay of Yendagaya is cleared, it's the open water of the channel and rolling waves. This expedition has travelled just at 500 kilometres to bring the adventure racers to the place where an imaginative scientist found himself just short of 2 centuries ago. When the Beagle's second edition set sail from England in 1832 with a young naturalist on board, few could contemplate the scientific revolution that would result. Charles Darwin sailed through this land on his way to the Galapagos and joined the early meditations on the nature of evolution. Darwin and the Beagle became the first ship to sail the full channel that now bears the ship's name. One of the remarkable encounters Darwin had in South America was with the native Yamana, known as the canoers of the Beagle and the southernmost inhabitants of the world. Darwin was astonished at the disparity between civilized man and the Aboriginal people he met. The Yamana lived alongside the coasts of southern Tierra del Fuego and all the way south to Cape Horn, and famously wearing little, even in the harsh climate, relying on fires they kept burning, even in their boats, to keep warm. The fire that keeps Helly Hansen Prunesco warm burns easily with a hard 6.5-hour paddle. Nearing the end of their journey by sea, the team will soon swap paddle for trekking gear for the final push to the finish line. The Spanish team has made their way into the checkpoint, stopping the clock until the next group of paddlers can depart. While back on the red boggy Turbo, the Canadian team Untamed New England and the Finnish squad Nordwater sloshed their way across the watery plain. The organic material is famous for hiding liquidy pockets that can swallow man or animal. Careful measures are taken as no one wants to fall victim this close to the end of the long trek. At higher elevation, Team Eastwind make their way up and through the lofty passage. Moving at a comfortable steady pace, the diligent team has outlasted the remaining field that, both through attrition or minor injury, has missed the cut-off times for the remaining control points and won't be allowed to finish. 8 of the starting 14 teams are still in the race. On Yendagaya, the teams who have successfully completed the trek are making their way along the bay shore and into the control point to await the start of the kayaking section in the race's penultimate segment. One by one, they come in various states and attitudes, completing what has to be considered the most challenging section of the race. While the chasing field sits frozen across the Beagle Channel in Yendagaya awaiting their launch, Team Helly Hansen Prunesco has launched their final assault on the only remaining leg, a 35-kilometre trek. But the 2010 Wenger Patagonian expedition race won't let them off lightly. Snowfall is making progress slightly more difficult. The team successfully makes their way up to the base of Mount King Scott and the final control point. It's an opportunity to refuel quickly, then continue towards the win. Of course, a snowball fight is as enticing to an adventure racer as it is to any adolescent.